The silence of deep space broke with a sound that had never been heard before. Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, staring at the communication screen with wide eyes. After 300 years of searching the stars, humanity had finally received its first message from alien life. The signal was weak and broken, coming from a star system 40 light-years away. Static filled most of the transmission, but underneath the noise, something was clearly trying to communicate. The sound was unlike anything human ears had ever heard, like crystal bells ringing in harmony, but with words hidden inside the music. "Sir? We're getting the same signal on all frequencies," reported Lieutenant Park So-min from her station. Her hands moved quickly over the controls, trying to clean up the transmission. "It's definitely artificial. Someone is trying to talk to us." Admiral Kim had spent 30 years in the Terran Defense Fleet. He had fought pirates in the asteroid belt and helped establish colonies on distant worlds. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. His heart beat faster as he realized that everything was about to change. "Get Captain Lee Dayun up here immediately," he ordered. "If anyone can figure out what they're saying, it's her." Captain Lee was the fleet's best language expert. She had learned over 20 human languages and created the computer programs that helped translate between Earth's many cultures. When she arrived on the bridge, her usually calm face showed excitement and fear. "Play it again," she said, sitting down at the communication station. The strange, crystal-like sounds filled the bridge once more. Lee closed her eyes and listened carefully, her trained ear picking up patterns that others missed. "There's structure here," she said after several minutes. "Repetition. They're saying the same things over and over, which means—" She paused, looking up at the Admiral. "This is a distress call." The words hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. Somewhere in the darkness of space, aliens were crying for help. Admiral Kim felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. Humanity had always wondered what they would do when they met other intelligent life. Now they were about to find out how long to decode it. Kim asked. "Give me 12 hours, Lee replied, already starting to work. "The computer will help, but this is completely different from any human language. It's like they think in music, instead of words." While Captain Lee worked on the message, Admiral Kim sent an urgent communication back to Earth. The news traveled through quantum relays, reaching Earth Command in minutes instead of the years it would have taken with old radio. Signals. Fleet Admiral Park Ji-hoon was in a meeting when the message arrived. He was a tall man with gray hair and scars from the Centauri conflicts, known for making hard decisions quickly. When he read the report, he immediately called an emergency session with Earth's leaders. The debate was fierce. Some argued that humanity should ignore the signal. "We don't know anything about these aliens," said General Wong. "They could be dangerous. This could be a trap." Others believed humanity had a duty to help. "If we turn our backs on them now, what does that say about us?" asked Dr. Chun, the head of the Xenobiology Institute. "We've always said we hope to find friends among the stars. Here's our chance to prove we mean it." Admiral Park listened to all sides, but his mind was already made up. "We're going," he announced. Humanity didn't become the dominant species on Earth by hiding from challenges. If someone needs help, we help them. Back on the Indomitable, Captain Lee had made progress. The alien message was becoming clearer with each hour of work. "What?" she found made her blood run cold. "Admiral, you need to hear this," she called. Kim rushed to her station, where alien words now appeared on the screen with human translations below them. "We are the Villani of Vestan Prime. Our worlds burn. The Kreks consume everything. We are the last. Help us, please. Someone help us." The message repeated over and over, but each time it got weaker. Whatever was sending it was running out of power. Lee had discovered more details that made the situation even worse. "Sir, they mentioned 17 worlds in their message. All destroyed. The Villani are down to just their home planet, and even that's under attack." Admiral Kim stared at the translation. 17 worlds. Billions of lives lost. An entire civilization crying out in the darkness, hoping someone would hear them. "How far?" he asked. "The Kepler 442 system. 43 light years. With our best." Ships, it would take 3 weeks to get there. Kim did the math in his head. 3 weeks to travel there, assuming they left immediately. But first, they would need to assemble a fleet. The Villani might not have that much time. The Admiral's communication panel lit up with an incoming message from Earth. Admiral Park's face appeared on screen, and Kim could see the determination in his old friend's eyes. "Teho, I'm sending you everything we have," Park said. 200 ships, 50,000 Marines, and the best equipment humanity can build. You leave in 72 hours. "Sir, that's almost our entire deep space fleet," Kim replied. "If this goes wrong, then we go down fighting for what's—" "Right," Park interrupted. "The President has approved Operation Helping Hand. Make us proud." The next 3 days passed in a blur of activity. Ships arrived from every human colony and military base. The massive carrier Defiant brought squadrons of fighters. The battleship Thunderstrike carried enough firepower to crack a moon. Hospital, ships, supply vessels, and troop transports all gathered around Earth. Commander Choi Hai-jin watched the fleet assemble from the training deck of her ship. She led the Storm Raiders, humanity's most elite fighting force. Her soldiers could fight in zero gravity, underwater, or on any world. They were the best of the best, and they would need to be. "Think they're as tough as the pirates we fought at Titan?" asked Sergeant Kim Young-soo, one of her most trusted soldiers. "I don't know," Choi replied honestly. "But whatever they are, they're about to learn what happens when you mess with innocent people." As the fleet prepared to leave, Captain Lee sent one final message toward the Villani homeworld. It was simple, transmitted in the same crystal song language she had learned to understand. "Hold on, help is coming." The human armada departed Earth on a Tuesday morning. 200 ships carrying humanity's hopes and fears jumped into hyperspace, beginning the long journey to a world they had never seen to save people they had never met. Admiral Kim stood on his bridge, watching Earth disappear behind them. He thought about the message that had started it all. Aliens calling for help in the darkness. Soon, they would learn that help was on the way. They would discover that Earth's children never abandon those in need. The greatest adventure in human history had begun. 3 weeks later, the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. What they saw made even the most experienced officers gasp in horror. Where 17 worlds should have been thriving with life, only dead rocks remained. The planets closest to the star were nothing but bare stone, their surfaces cracked and burned. Massive mining scars covered entire continents, as if something had stripped away everything valuable and left the rest to die. Admiral Kim Tae-ho felt sick as he looked at the sensor readings. "How many people lived here?" he asked Captain Lee. "Dayun," the Villani messages mentioned billions, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. They had 1,000 years of civilization, art, music, science, all gone. Captain Yoon Min-ho commanded the reconnaissance ship Swift Arrow, the fastest vessel in the human fleet. His job was to scout ahead and gather information before the main force moved in. As his ship glided silently between the dead worlds, his sensors picked up something that made him lean forward in his chair. "Admiral, I'm detecting energy signatures near the 4th planet," he reported over the communication link. "It looks like ... defensive shields. Someone's still alive." The Swift Arrow moved closer, its advanced sensors painting a picture of the last Villani stronghold. Vestan Prime was a beautiful blue and green world, similar to Earth but with purple oceans and silver clouds. Around the planet, a shimmering energy barrier flickered and sparked, clearly failing under constant attack. "Sir, I'm picking up the attackers," reported Lieutenant Shin Biora from the Swift Arrow's engineering station. "Ships unlike anything in our databases. They read ... organic, like they're grown instead of built." Captain Yoon activated his ship's most powerful sensors. The Krex vessels were indeed strange, twisted shapes that looked more like giant insects than spacecraft. Their hulls seemed to pulse with life, and strange tendrils extended from their surfaces like reaching arms. "They're beautiful," whispered Dr. Han Woo-jin, the fleet's chief medical officer, as he studied the readings from his own ship. "And Absolutely terrifying. Admiral Kim made his decision quickly. All ships, prepare for first contact protocols. Swift Arrow, take us in slowly. Let's not start a war before we know what we're dealing with. As the human fleet approached Theshan, Prime, something wonderful happened. The planet's defenders noticed them. A new signal came through the communication system, and this time Captain Lee was ready for it. The voice that came through was like crystal bells singing, but now Lee's computers could translate it into human words. Unknown vessels, please identify yourselves. Are you with the Creks? We will fight until our last breath. Lee quickly composed a response in the crystal song language. We are humans from Earth. We received your distress call. We came to help. The silence that followed lasted for several minutes. Then, a different voice came through, older, sadder, but filled with sudden hope. I am the Sandra, High Counselor of the Villani. You came. After all this time, someone actually came. Admiral Kim took over the communication himself. We're here to help, Counselor. Tell us what you need. What followed was the most important conversation in human history. Sandra's crystal song voice painted a picture of horror that made the human crews angry and determined. The Creks had come from outside the galaxy 50 years ago. They moved from system to system like a plague, stripping worlds of resources and enslaving the survivors. But they didn't just want materials, they wanted the people themselves. They'd put things in our heads, Sandra explained, and the translation couldn't hide the pain in her voice. Metal worms that control our thoughts. Our people become slaves, forced to work for the Creks until they die. The lucky ones die quickly. Dr. Han Woo-jin listened carefully to every detail. As the fleet's medical expert, he was already thinking about ways to help the victims. These implants, he asked through the communication link, are they biological or mechanical? Both, came the reply. They grow inside the brain, becoming part of the victim. We have never found a way to remove them safely. Lieutenant Shin, there still aboard the Swift Arrow, was studying the wreckage of destroyed Krek ships floating in space. Her engineering training told her that these vessels were far advanced beyond human technology, but they had weaknesses. Admiral, she reported. Privately, I'm seeing something interesting in this wreckage. The Krek ships use a lot of electromagnetic systems. Our EMP weapons might be more effective against them than we thought. As the humans talked with the Villani, the Kreks became aware of the new arrivals. A probe ship, smaller than the main fleet, but still massive by human standards, detached from the attacking force and headed toward the human vessels. Captain Kang Suho was ready for them. He commanded Fighter Squadron Alpha, 12 of humanity's best pilots flying the most advanced fighters ever built. As the Kreks probe approached, he led his squadron to intercept. Remember your training, he told his pilots over the radio. We don't know what they can do, so stay sharp and be ready for anything. The first battle between humans and aliens lasted only 5 minutes, but it changed everything. The Kreks probe ship was 3 times larger than any human fighter, covered in armor that seemed to shift and move like living skin. It fired weapons that shot balls of living electricity, and its movements were smooth and organic, but Captain Kang had something the Kreks had never faced before: human unpredictability. Instead of flying in formation like every other species, the Kreks had fought, the human pilots scattered in all directions. They used random flight patterns, sudden course changes, and tactics that made no mathematical sense. What are they doing? Wondered the Kreks pilot, its insect-like mind struggling to understand the chaos around it. The answer came when Kong's fighter dove straight down while 2 others attacked from impossible angles. The Krek ship, trying to track all 12 fighters at once, became confused and slow to react. Human missiles, guided by computers but fired with organic intuition, slammed into the alien vessel. The Kreks probe ship exploded in a shower of sparks and strange, glowing fluid. Target destroyed, Kong reported, his voice calm despite the excitement racing through his body. Sir, I think we can take these things. Admiral Kim felt pride and worry at the same time. Pride because his people had won their first battle against the aliens. Worry because now the Kreks knew humans existed, the main Krex fleet immediately changed its behavior. Instead of continuing to attack the Villani shields, hundreds of ships turned toward the human armada. Sensors showed them moving fast, weapons charging. "Sir," reported Captain Yoon from the Swift Arrow, "they're coming right at us, all of them." Admiral Kim looked at his fleet, 200 human ships against over 1,000 Krex vessels. The smart thing would be to retreat, regroup, and come back with a better plan, but on the planet below, millions of Villani were trapped behind failing shields, waiting for rescue that might never come. "All ships, prepare for battle," Kim ordered. "We didn't come this far to run away at the first sign of trouble." As the two fleets approached each other, something unexpected happened. The Krex ships began transmitting on all frequencies, not words but sounds. Horrible screeching noises that hurt to hear. "It's psychological warfare," realized Dr. Han. "They're trying to frighten us before the battle even starts." Captain Lee listened to the alien sounds and smiled grimly. "They don't know who they're dealing with," she said. "Humans invented psychological warfare." She opened a channel on all Krex frequencies and transmitted something that made the alien fleet pause in confusion. It was an old human song, one that had been sung by soldiers for hundreds of years. The words were simple, but the meaning was clear. "We are coming for you." The space between the fleets filled with tension as both sides prepared for a battle. That would decide the fate of two species. Admiral Kim looked around his bridge at the determined faces of his crew. Somewhere in the distance, the Villani watched their skies and hoped. On Earth, families waited for news of their loved ones. And in the cold vacuum of space, humans prepared to show the galaxy what happens when someone threatens the innocent. The real war was about to begin. The captured Krex ship floated in the cargo bay of the UES Indomitable like a nightmare made real. Its hull was dark purple and seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting as if it were alive. Strange tubes and wires grew from its surface like veins, and the whole thing smelled like rotting metal. Major Lim Jae-sung stood in front of the alien vessel wearing full protective gear. As head of military intelligence, it was his job to learn everything he could about humanity's new enemy. What he had discovered in the past week made him both excited and terrified. "Admiral, you need to see this," he called to Kim Tae-ho, who had come down to the cargo bay personally. "We've figured out why the Krex have been so successful." Kim approached the ship carefully. Even disabled, it looked dangerous. "Show me, eh?" Lim activated a holographic display that showed the internal structure of the Krex vessel. "Look at this." "Sir, the ship isn't just organic, it's actually a living creature. The Krex don't build their ships, they grow them. And inside ... he pointed to several chambers in the ship's belly. Slaves, hundreds of them. The Admiral's face went hard. Inside the chambers, they had found the preserved bodies of aliens from a dozen different species. All had the same thing, metal implants growing through their brains like cancerous roots. Every species they've conquered was peaceful, Lim continued. Traders, farmers, scientists, none of them were warriors. They never had to fight for survival like we did on Earth. Dr. Han Woo-jin had been studying the implants for days. The ship's medical bay was full of samples and test equipment as he tried to understand how the Krex controlled their victims. "It's horrifying," he reported to the senior staff. "The implants don't just control behavior, they rewrite the victim's personality completely. After a few weeks, the original person is gone forever. Only a slave remains." Captain Lee Yoon had been working with the ship's computer systems. The Krex technology was incredibly advanced, but it was also predictable. "They think like machines," she explained. "Everything is calculated for maximum efficiency. Their battle plans, their ship movements, even their conversation, it all follows mathematical patterns." This was information that excited Admiral Kim. "So they're predictable?" "Completely," Lee nodded. "They've probably never faced an enemy that didn't follow the same logical patterns they do." The first major test of this theory came sooner than anyone expected. 3 days after capturing the Krex ship, long-range sensors detected a massive enemy fleet approaching Vestan Prime, over 2,000 vessels, 10 times larger than the human force, The Kreks had sent everything they had in the local area to crush these strange new enemies who had dared to interfere with their conquest. Admiral Kim called an emergency meeting with all his ship captains. The holographic display in the conference room showed the approaching enemy fleet, a swarm of organic ships that looked like angry insects flying through space. "They outnumber us badly," he said simply. "In a straight fight, they'll destroy the U.S. in minutes, so we're not going to fight straight." Captain Yoon Min-ho leaned forward. "What do you mean, sir?" "Every alien species they fought has used logical tactics. They see a big enemy fleet, they form their own fleet to fight it. They protect their most important ships by putting them in the center. They follow rules." Kim smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "We're going to break every rule they—" No. The battle plan that emerged was unlike anything in the history of space warfare. Instead of forming a traditional battle line, the human fleet would scatter across the entire star system. They would hide behind planets and asteroid fields. Even in the upper atmosphere of gas giants. Commander Choi Hae-jin listened to the plan with growing excitement. Her storm raiders specialized in impossible missions, and this sounded right up their alley. "Sir, what about boarding actions?" "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd ask," Kim replied. "The Kreks have never faced an enemy that fights hand-to-hand. Their ships are designed to keep enemies out, not to stop them once they're inside." Lieutenant Shin Biora raised her hand. "Admiral, I've been studying their ship construction. Their hulls are strong, but they have weak points where the organic systems connect to the mechanical ones. We could breach them there." Dr. Han added his own contribution. "And I've developed something that might help." He held up a small device that looked like a metal disc. "It's an electromagnetic pulse generator specifically tuned to disrupt the frequency their implants use. It won't remove the implants, but it might confuse them temporarily." The Kreks fleet arrived at Deshan Prime expecting to find the human ships grouped together for easy destruction. Instead, they found empty space. Krex. Fleet Commander Stock was confused. His sensors showed human vessels scattered throughout the system, hiding like prey animals instead of fighting like warriors. It made no sense according to any tactical database he had studied. "Pursue and destroy them individually," he ordered his fleet. "They are cowards. We will hunt them down, one by one." This was exactly what Admiral Kim had been hoping for. As the Krek ships spread out to hunt the scattered human vessels, they played right into humanity's trap. The first Krek squadron to enter the asteroid belt found Captain Kang Soo-ho waiting for them with his fighters hidden behind floating rocks. The aliens expected the human ships to run when they were discovered. Instead, Kang's fighters came screaming out of hiding, firing missiles and lasers at point-blank range before diving back into the asteroid field. "What kind of tactics are these?" wondered the Krek squadron leader as his ships tried to follow the fighters through the deadly maze of floating rocks. The organic Kreks vessels were large and graceful in open space, but among the asteroids they were clumsy and slow. Human fighters, built small and fast, danced between the rocks like deadly birds. They would appear from behind one asteroid, fire their weapons, then disappear behind another before the Kreks could respond. Within an hour, the entire Krek squadron was destroyed without the loss of a single human fighter. Similar battles erupted across the star system as human ships used every dirty trick they could think of. Captain Song Hyun-woo led his destroyers in hit-and-run attacks near the gas giant's rings, using the planet's gravity and radiation to confuse Krek sensors, but the most important battle was happening on Deshan Prime itself, where Commander Choi Hae-jin was preparing for something no human had ever attempted before boarding an alien mothership in the middle of combat. "Remember," she told her storm raiders as they prepared their assault pods, "we're not just trying to capture this ship. We're trying to prove that humans can go anywhere and fight anyone." The Krek's mothership was enormous, nearly 10 kilometers long and covered in weapon systems. It hung in orbit above Deshan Prime like a metal moon coordinating the attacks. On the planet's failing shields, Choi's assault pods launched from the Indomitable, flying low and fast to avoid the mothership's sensors. The pods were designed to look like space debris, and the Kreks were too busy managing the battle to notice them approaching. The pods slammed into the mothership's hull like bullets, their drill tips boring through the organic armor. Inside each pod, Storm Raiders prepared for combat in an environment no human had ever seen. Sergeant Omi Young was the first human to set foot inside an alien warship. The corridor she emerged into was dark and humid, with walls that pulsed like a heartbeat. Strange sounds echoed from deeper in the ship, clicking, scratching noises that made her skin crawl. "Stay together," she whispered to her squad over the radio. "Watch each other's backs. We have no idea what we're going to find in here." What they found was beyond their worst nightmares. The ship was full of enslaved aliens working like robots, their eyes empty and dead. Kreks warriors moved between them, tall insect-like creatures with 4 arms and mouths full of razor teeth, but the Storm Raiders had trained for urban combat on Earth, fighting in the rubble of destroyed cities and the tunnels beneath the ground. This was just another battlefield, and they were very good at what they did. The first Kreks warrior to encounter Sergeant O's squad died before it even understood what was happening. Human weapons, designed to kill other humans in close combat, were devastatingly effective against aliens who had never faced determined infantry. "They're not used to fighting people who fight back," O reported as her squad moved deeper into the ship. "The slaves don't resist, so the Kreks don't know how to handle someone who shoots at them." Commander Choi led the main assault force toward the ship's command center. Her mission was simple: capture the ship's brain and turn it against the Kreks fleet. The battle inside the mothership was brutal and chaotic. Kreks warriors were individually stronger than humans, but they had never learned to fight in cramped spaces. Against enemies who used cover and teamwork, human soldiers moved like shadows through the organic corridors, using grenades and explosives to clear rooms full of enemies. Dr. Han's EMP devices proved incredibly effective, disrupting not just the implants but also the ship's control systems. The climax came when Choi's team reached the command center and found the ship's brain, a massive organic computer that pulsed with alien thoughts. "Shin, can you interface with this thing?" Choi asked Lieutenant Shin Bo Ra. "I can try," the engineer replied, pulling out her computer equipment. "If their technology is as predictable as Captain." 3 months had passed since the first victory at Theshan Prime. The Villani homeworld was safe, its people free to rebuild their shattered civilization. But in the deep space monitoring stations around the system, alarm bells were ringing. "Captain." No UNSCO stood on the bridge of her carrier, the UES Defiant, watching the sensor displays with growing dread. The numbers were almost impossible to believe. Over 3,000 Kreks ships approaching from multiple directions, carrying what appeared to be millions of warriors. "Admiral, this isn't just a revenge attack," she reported to Kim Tae-ho over the communication link. "This is an extermination fleet. They're bringing everything they have in this part of the galaxy." Admiral Kim studied the tactical display in his ready room. Red dots representing enemy ships covered the holographic star map like a swarm of angry insects. Each dot represented a vessel capable of destroying cities, and there were too many to count. "How long until they arrive?" he asked. 12 hours, came the reply from his sensor officer. "Sir, even with the reinforcements from Earth, we're still outnumbered 15 to 1. The reinforcements had arrived just a week earlier. Fleet Admiral Park Ji-hoon had brought everything Earth could spare. Another 100 ships, 30,000 Marines, and humanity's newest weapons. But even with the combined fleet, they faced impossible odds. Dr. Han Woo-jin had spent the past 3 months studying captured Kreks, technology, and freed slaves from a dozen species. His medical bay had become a research center where human doctors worked alongside Villani healers and scientists from other liberated worlds. "I've made a breakthrough," he announced during the emergency staff meeting. "The Kreks' collective consciousness works through quantum entanglement. Each implant is connected to every other implant through subspace frequencies." Captain Lee Yoon leaned forward, interested. "You mean they're all connected, like a giant network?" "Exactly, and that gives us a weakness we can exploit. If we can disrupt the quantum field that connects them all, we can break their coordination completely. Lieutenant Shin Biora, now promoted, after her success in hacking the Krex mothership, had been working on the technical details. I've designed a quantum disruption device, but there's a problem. To affect their entire fleet, we'd need to detonate it at the center of their formation. A suicide mission, Admiral Kim said quietly. Yes, sir. Whoever carries the device won't be coming back. The room fell silent as everyone understood the implications. To save both human and Villani civilization, someone would have to fly into the heart of the enemy fleet and sacrifice themselves. Captain Song Hyan-woo cleared his throat. Sir, my destroyers are the fastest ships in the fleet. We could get close enough to deploy the device. No, Kim replied firmly. If anyone's making this run, it'll be me and the Indomitable. The fleet needs someone expendable in command. With respect, Admiral, interrupted Commander Choi Hai-jin, you're not expendable. Let me and my Storm Raiders handle this. We volunteered for impossible missions when we joined the unit. The debate was interrupted by an urgent communication from the Villani. High Counselor Thesandra's crystal song voice filled the room, translated by the computers into human words. Admiral Kim, our deep space sensors show something disturbing. The Krex aren't just bringing warships. They have slave transports. Thousands of them. They plan to take every living being in this system as prisoners. The revelation changed everything. This wasn't just a military attack. It was an attempt to capture and enslave two entire species. The Krex wanted to add human and Villani minds to their collective consciousness. They think we'll surrender when we see how outnumbered we are, Admiral Kim realized. They don't understand that humans never give up. Captain Yoon Min-ho, whose reconnaissance ship had been watching the approaching fleet, sent new intelligence that made the situation even more complex. Sir, the enemy formation isn't what we expected. They're not coming as one big fleet. They're arriving in waves, testing our defenses before committing their main force. This gave Admiral Kim an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. What if we don't wait for them to come to us? What if we attack them while they're still scattered? The plan that emerged was the most daring in human military history. Instead of defending Theshan Prime, the human fleet would split into small groups and attack the Krex waves as they arrived. It violated every principle of space warfare, but it was exactly the kind of unpredictable strategy that had worked before. We'll use the entire star system as our battlefield, Kim explained to his captains. Hit them when they're not ready, disappear before they can respond, then hit them again somewhere else. The first Krex wave arrived expecting to find the human fleet grouped around the planet in a defensive formation. Instead, they found Captain Kang Soo-ho waiting for them in the outer asteroid belt with 2 squadrons of fighters and a single destroyer. The Krex commander was puzzled. Sensors showed only a tiny human force, hardly worth noticing. But as his ships moved forward to destroy them, Kang sprang his trap. Hidden throughout the asteroid field were automated mines that Dr. Han and Lieutenant Shin had modified with quantum disruptors. When the Krex ships passed by, the mines activated, sending electromagnetic pulses through the enemy formation. The effect was immediate and devastating. Krex warriors throughout the fleet suddenly found their implant connections disrupted. For the first time in decades, enslaved beings across multiple ships regained their free will. What's happening? Screamed the Krex commander as his slave. Workers stopped following orders and began attacking their masters. Throughout his fleet, species that had been enslaved for years suddenly remembered who they were and what had been done to them. Captain Kang didn't wait to see the results of the slave uprising. His fighters swooped in while the Krex ships were in chaos, targeting command centers and power systems. Within an hour, the entire first wave was either destroyed or captured by its own former slaves. The second wave arrived 6 hours later, better prepared, but still confused by human tactics. This time, it was Captain Song Hyan-woo's turn to show what Earth's children could do. His destroyer group was hiding in the radiation shadow of the system's gas giant when the Krex ships arrived. The aliens had learned to expect ambush, but they didn't expect Song to come screaming out of a gas giant's atmosphere at full speed. weapons blazing. "This is for every world you've destroyed," Song shouted over the communication channel as his ships tore into the Krex formation. His destroyers were smaller and weaker than the alien vessels, but they were also faster and more maneuverable. The battle became a deadly game of cat and mouse among the gas giants' moons. Human ships would appear from behind one moon, fire their weapons, then disappear behind another before the Krex could respond. The aliens, used to fighting in open space, became confused and frustrated. Sergeant Omi Young led her squad in yet another boarding action, this time targeting a Krex command ship that was trying to coordinate the confused enemy fleet. Her soldiers had become experts at fighting inside alien vessels, moving like deadly shadows through the organic corridors. "The enslaved crews are helping us," she reported as her team fought their way toward the ship's brain. "Once we disrupt their implants, they turn on their captors immediately." But the Krex were learning too. The third wave arrived with new tactics designed to counter human unpredictability. Their ships stayed together in tight formations, used overlapping shields to protect each other, and employed new weapons specifically designed to hunt down small, fast targets. Commander Choi Haijin faced these improved tactics when her Storm Raiders attempted to board another mothership. This time, the aliens were ready for them. "They've adapted," she reported grimly as her assault pods came under heavy fire. "They know we're coming and they're prepared for us." The battle for the third wave was brutal and costly. Human ships were destroyed, brave soldiers died, and for the first time since the war began, it looked like the Krex might achieve victory, but then reinforcements arrived from an unexpected source. The first two Krex waves hadn't been completely destroyed. Many of their ships had been captured by freed slaves, and those former prisoners had spent the past few hours learning to use Krex technology against their former masters. A fleet of captured alien vessels, crewed by liberated beings from a dozen different species, arrived just as the human fleet was about to be overwhelmed. The sight of their own ships fighting against them broke the morale of the third Krex wave. Admiral Kim watched from his bridge as the tide of battle turned once again. "All ships, this is Admiral Kim. The enemy is retreating, but this isn't over. Long-range sensors show the main Krex fleet approaching." This was just the advance guard. The captured intelligence from the defeated waves painted a terrifying picture. The main Krex fleet consisted of over 10,000 ships, including massive, world-killer vessels capable of destroying entire planets. At its center was something called the Prime Overmind, a super-intelligent entity that commanded the entire Krex race. Dr. Han studied the intelligence reports with growing excitement and fear. "The Prime Overmind isn't just their leader," he explained to the senior staff. "It's the central node of their entire collective consciousness. If we could destroy it, we'd free every enslaved being in the galaxy." The quantum disruption device detonated at exactly 1432 ship time, sending invisible waves of energy across the entire Krex fleet. On thousands of alien vessels, millions of enslaved beings suddenly felt their minds become their own again for the first time in years. Dr. Hanwoo Jin watched the readings from his medical bay, hardly able to believe what he was seeing. "It worked," he whispered, then louder. "It actually worked. The quantum field is collapsing across their entire formation." But the victory came with a terrible price. The device had been placed at the heart of the enemy fleet by Lieutenant Colonel Bae Dong-hyeon and his volunteer force. None of them were coming home. Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood on his bridge, watching as chaos erupted throughout the massive Krex armada. Ship after ship went dark as their enslaved crews turned on their captors. The largest fleet in galactic history was tearing itself apart from the inside. "Sir, we're receiving transmissions from the Krex ships," reported Captain Lee Yoon, her voice filled with amazement. "Dozens of different languages. They're thanking us." Commander Choi Haijin led her Storm Raiders in rescue operations, boarding Krex vessels to help the newly freed prisoners. What they found broke their hearts and filled them with rage. "Admiral, you need to see this," she transmitted from inside a Krex slave transport. The video she sent showed thousands of beings from species nobody had ever seen before, all bearing the scars of Krex implants. Some had been enslaved for so long they barely remembered their own names. Among the rescued was a tall, muscular alien, with gray skin and 4 arms. He introduced himself as Garthok, a warrior from a species called the Vorthek. He had been enslaved for over 20 years, forced to fight for the Krex against his own people. "Your warriors freed my mind," he told Sergeant Omi Young in broken but understandable human language. "I am in your debt. My people believe in honor above all things. How can we repay this gift?" Sergeant O looked at the scars covering Garthok's body, evidence of decades of abuse and forced combat. "Help us free the others," she said simply. "That's all the payment we need," but the liberation was not complete. Many of the freed slaves were dying as their bodies rejected the removal of the implants. The metal devices had grown so deeply into their nervous systems that taking them out was often fatal. Captain Quan Ji-min, commanding the medical frigate Mercy, worked around the clock with Dr. Han and a team of volunteer doctors from multiple species. Her ship's medical bays were overflowing with patients, some of whom hadn't spoken their own names in decades. "We're losing too many," she reported grimly to Admiral Kim. "The implants are too integrated. Some of these people have been enslaved. Since childhood, the devices are part of their brain structure now." Dr. Han refused to give up. Working with freed Vorthak healers and Villani crystal singers who could sense electromagnetic fields, he developed new surgical techniques that nobody had ever attempted before. "We're not just removing metal," he explained to his surgical team. "We're trying to rebuild damaged minds. Every patient is different, every case unique." The work was exhausting and heartbreaking. For every successful surgery, there were 2 failures. But slowly, more and more freed beings began to recover their memories and personalities. Meanwhile, the military situation was becoming complicated. General Yang Tae-min had arrived with the 2nd Expeditionary Force, bringing another 100 human ships and thousands of fresh troops. But coordinating between humans and dozens of newly freed alien species was proving challenging. "They all want to fight," Yang reported to Admiral Kim. "Every species we've freed wants revenge against the Krex, but their technology is different. Their tactics are different, even their concepts of military organization are different. The Vorthik were natural warriors who preferred direct combat. The crystal-singing Villani were better at coordination and communication. A species called the Nexari had incredible engineering skills but no combat experience at all. Each group brought their own strengths and weaknesses. Captain Yoon Min-ho had been exploring the captured Krex ships, trying to understand their technology and gather intelligence about their remaining forces. What he found was both encouraging and terrifying. "The good news is that the Krex Empire is falling apart," he reported. "The quantum disruption has affected their forces across multiple star systems. Slave rebellions are happening everywhere. And the bad news?" Admiral Kim asked. "The Prime Overmind is still out there, and it's not giving up. Our intelligence suggests it's gathering its remaining loyal forces for one final assault. Not just on us, but on Earth itself. The revelation that Earth was threatened changed everything." Admiral Kim had been planning to take the fight to the Krex homeworld, but now he faced a terrible choice. Stay and help coordinate the liberation of the galaxy, or rush home to defend humanity's birth world. The decision was made for him when long-range sensors detected a massive Krex fleet heading directly toward Earth. The Prime Overmind had decided that if it couldn't control the galaxy, it would at least destroy the species that had caused its downfall. "How long do we have?" Kim asked. 3 weeks, maybe 4, replied Captain Lee. "But sir, if we leave now, all the progress we've made here will be lost. The freed species aren't ready to defend themselves yet." That's when Garthok stepped forward. The Vorthik warrior had been learning human military tactics and had proven surprisingly good at adapting them to alien warfare. "We will hold this system," he declared in his deep, rumbling voice. "My people know honor. The Crystal Singers know coordination. The Nexari know engineering. Together we can protect what you have given us." Admiral Kim looked around at the faces of the beings. They had freed. Aliens from dozens of worlds, all united by their shared hatred of the Kreks and their gratitude to humanity. They weren't just asking for help anymore, they were offering to help in return. "Are you sure?" he asked Garthok. "The Kreks will send everything they have left to retake this system." The Vorthik warrior smiled, showing teeth that could tear through metal. "Let them come? They will find that slaves who remember their freedom fight differently than slaves who never knew it." High Counselor Thesindra added her crystal song voice to the discussion. "Admiral Kim, your people gave us back our lives. Now we give you back yours. Go protect your homeworld. We will guard the road behind you." The decision was still agonizing, but Admiral Kim knew it was the right one. The human fleet would return to Earth, while their alien allies held the line in this part of the galaxy. But before they left, Dr. Han made one final breakthrough that would change everything. Working with a freed Krek scientist who had retained its memories despite decades of implantation, he discovered the location of the Prime Overmind. More importantly, he learned its greatest secret. "It's not just a computer or a biological entity," he explained to the assembled fleet commanders. "The Prime Overmind is made up of millions of enslaved minds, all forced together into one consciousness. Every Krek's leader, every brilliant scientist they've captured, every strategic genius they've enslaved, they're all trapped inside it." Captain Lee looked up from her analysis. "You mean if we could free those minds instead of destroying them? We could turn the Prime Overmind's greatest strength into its greatest weakness," Dr. Han finished. All those brilliant minds suddenly working against their captor instead of for it. Lieutenant Shinbi Ora had been working on modifications to the quantum disruptor. "I can retune the device to separate consciousness instead of destroying them, but the targeting has to be absolutely precise. One mistake and we could kill everyone trapped inside." As the human fleet prepared to depart for Earth, they carried with them not just weapons and soldiers, but hope for a different kind of victory. Instead of destroying their enemy, they might be able to save it. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks, but it felt like months. Every day brought reports from the front lines: Krek's counterattacks, alien cooperation, small victories, and painful defeats. The liberated species were holding their ground, but just barely. When the human fleet finally arrived in Earth's solar system, they found something that filled them with both pride and fear. The entire human defense fleet was there, every ship humanity could build or repair. Nearly 1,000 vessels surrounded Earth, like a protective shell, but even that massive force looked small compared to what was coming for them, the Prime Overminds. Final fleet emerged from hyperspace like a dark tide, stretching across space as far as sensors could reach. 10,000 ships, millions of warriors, and at their center, a vessel so large it could have been mistaken for a small moon. Admiral Kim stood on his bridge, looking at the enemy force that had come to end humanity. Behind him was Earth, the world that had given birth to the species that dared to challenge the galaxy's greatest power. "All ships," he broadcast to the combined human fleet. "This is Admiral Kim Tae-ho. Today we fight not just for our world, but for the right of all beings to be free. Whatever happens, remember that we chose this fight because it was right." The final battle for humanity's survival was about to begin. The battle for Earth began at dawn, when the first Krek ships entered the outer solar system. Admiral Kim Tae-ho watched from the bridge of the Indomitable as 10,000 enemy vessels spread across space like a plague of metal insects. At the center of the enemy formation was the Prime Overmind's ship, a massive, biomechanical fortress that dwarfed even the largest human vessels. Its hull pulsed with alien life, and strange energies crackled around its surface like lightning. "Sir, they're not attacking immediately," reported Captain Lee Yoon from her sensor station. "They're just dotting." Then the communication came. The Prime Overmind's voice filled every human ship simultaneously, speaking in perfect human language with the voices of thousands of enslaved beings. "Humans of Earth," the collective consciousness said, its words carrying the pain of millions of trapped minds. "You have caused great damage to our order. But we offer you one chance for mercy. Surrender now, accept our guidance, and your species will be preserved. Admiral Kim activated the fleet-wide communication system. His response was simple and clear: no. The word echoed across space, carried by every human ship to every human world. It was humanity's answer to slavery, to conquest, to the idea that some beings had the right to control others. The Prime Overmind's response was immediate and terrible. Energy weapons that could crack planets opened fire, and the space around Earth filled with death. Captain Ruasio Jin commanded the stealth ship Shadow's Edge, hidden among the asteroids of the belt. Her mission was perhaps the most important in human history: get close enough to the Prime Overmind's ship to deploy Dr. Han's modified quantum disruptor. Remember, Dr. Han had told her before the mission, this isn't about destroying the Overmind. It's about freeing all the minds trapped inside it. The device has to be placed at exactly the right location, or those people will die. Ru's ship slipped through the battle like a ghost, invisible to Krex sensors but not to the chaos of combat around her. Human ships were dying, their brave crews fighting to the last breath to protect their homeworld. Captain Kang Soo-ho led his fighter squadrons in desperate attacks against impossible odds. His pilots flew their small ships between massive Krex battleships, targeting weak points and drawing fire away from the larger human vessels. This is Alpha Leader, he broadcast to his squadron. Remember, we're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for every being in the galaxy who wants to be free. On the surface of Earth, people gathered in shelters and watched the sky burn. Some prayed, some cried, some simply held their loved ones close. All of them knew that humanity's fate was being decided in the darkness above. Commander Choi Hai-jin led her Storm Raiders in one final boarding action, targeting a Krex command ship that was coordinating attacks on the human fleet. As her assault pods slammed into the alien vessel's hull, she thought about all the battles that had brought them to this moment. For every world they've destroyed, she whispered as her team breached the ship's corridors. For every person they've enslaved, for everyone who can't fight back. The battle inside the Krex ship was brutal. The aliens had learned from previous encounters and were ready for human boarding tactics. But the Storm Raiders had something the Krex couldn't understand. They were fighting for more than just victory. They were fighting for the right to exist. As free beings, meanwhile, Captain Ru guided her stealth ship closer to the Prime Overmind's fortress. The massive vessel was protected by energy shields and surrounded by escort ships, but Dr. Han had found a weakness in its design: the biomechanical interface, he had explained, where the living parts connect to the mechanical systems. That's where the quantum field is strongest, and that's where we need to place the device. Ru's ship slipped past the outer defenses, using the chaos of battle to mask its approach. As she got closer to the fortress, she could see the horror of what the Prime Overmind truly was. The ship's hull was covered in organic growths that pulsed with alien thoughts. Inside those growths were the preserved brains of millions of enslaved beings, all connected together in a network of pain and control. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Park So-min, Ru's sensor officer. "Captain, there are so many of them. Millions of people trapped in that thing." Ru's jaw tightened with determination. "And we're going to free them all." The Shadow's Edge landed on the fortress's hull like a flea on a giant beast. Ru and her small team had to work quickly. Their ship wouldn't stay hidden for long, and the quantum disruptor had to be placed in exactly the right location. They cut through the organic hull using plasma torches, creating an opening into the fortress's interior. What they found inside was beyond nightmare. Corridors lined with the preserved bodies of enslaved beings, all connected by cables and tubes to the central consciousness. "The interface chamber should be just ahead," Dr. Han's voice crackled over the radio from his position on the Indomitable. "You need to place the device at the exact center of the quantum field." As Ru's team moved deeper into the fortress, they encountered something unexpected: resistance from the trapped minds themselves. "Help us," voices whispered from the walls around them. "Please help us. We've been trapped so long. We can't remember who we were." Dr. Han had made one final modification to the quantum disruptor based on his work with the freed slaves. Instead of simply breaking the connections between minds, the device would try to restore their individual identities. It's experimental, he had warned. I don't know if it will work on minds that have been merged for so long. But it's their only chance. Rue reached the interface chamber just as the fortress's defenses detected her ship. Alarms began blaring, and Krex warriors started moving through the corridors toward her position. The chamber was enormous, filled with a web of organic and mechanical connections that stretched up into the darkness above. At the center was a pulsing mass of neural tissue, the heart of the Prime Overmind's consciousness. Devices in position, Rue reported as she attached Dr. Han's quantum disruptor to the central neural mass. Beginning activation sequence. The Krex warriors reached the chamber just as the device began to charge. But instead of trying to stop them, Rue did something that surprised everyone. She activated the fortress's communication system and began to talk. "You don't have to fight us," she said, her voice echoing through the chamber and beyond. "We're not here to destroy you. We're here to free you." The Krex warriors hesitated, confusion in their alien eyes. For the first time in their lives, they were hearing someone offer them freedom instead of demanding their obedience. The quantum disruptor reached full charge and activated with a pulse of energy that could be felt across the entire star system. The effect was immediate and extraordinary. Throughout the Prime Overmind's fortress, millions of trapped minds suddenly remembered who they were. Species that had been enslaved for centuries recalled their names, their homes, their families. The collective consciousness that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years began to break apart. But instead of dying, the freed minds began to work together in a new way. No longer forced to think as one, they chose to cooperate as many. The knowledge and wisdom of countless civilizations suddenly turned against their former captor, the Prime. Overmind's ship stopped attacking and began broadcasting on all frequencies. But now the voice was different, not one consciousness speaking with many voices, but many consciousnesses speaking as one. "People of the galaxy," the message said, "we are free. The Krex Empire is ended, we choose peace." Across the galaxy, Krex ships suddenly stopped fighting as their crews regained their free will. Species that had been enemies for millennia discovered they had been forced to fight each other by their common oppressor. The battle around Earth ended not with destruction, but with liberation. Krex warriors threw down their weapons and asked for forgiveness. Former slave species reached out to each other and to humanity, offering friendship and alliance. Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood on his bridge, hardly able to believe what he was seeing. The largest fleet in galactic history was surrendering, but not in defeat, in gratitude. Captain Rue's team was rescued from the fortress by the same Krex warriors who had been trying to stop them minutes before. The aliens, no longer controlled by the Overmind, helped repair her ship and escorted her safely back to the human fleet. Dr. Han's greatest triumph came when he met the former Prime Overmind entities face to face. They were no longer a collective consciousness, but individual beings who had retained all their memories of both enslavement and freedom. "Thank you," said one of them, a being that had once been a Krex scientist before being absorbed into the collective. "You gave us back our souls." The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Millions of beings needed help recovering from centuries of slavery. Worlds needed to be rebuilt. Governments needed to be established that would protect freedom instead of destroying it. 6 months later, representatives from hundreds of species gathered on Earth for the founding of the Galactic Federation of Free Worlds. The charter was simple. Every being had the right to be free, and all members pledged to protect that freedom. Admiral Kim, now promoted to Fleet Admiral of the Federation Defense Force, stood before the assembly and thought about the message that had started it all, a desperate cry for help. Fr.